China was the factory of the world. China was the engine of the global economy. This role is changing, but in ways that are surprising. China will be one of the main engines of innovation globally. The IP, the ideas, the new business models that emerge from China will be able to power Asian economies and global economies. Has China basically replaced the West as the innovation engine of the global economy? And the answer is not. It's a complementary engine. There's some things where the West is ahead of China, like for instance in semiconductors, or things like entertainment, the Champions League, a wonderful product. This is done in Europe in a way that has no equivalent in China. However, in some other areas, and we all know those, from EVs to batteries to solar cells, China is the engine of innovation and therefore drives global growth. So the big structural deficit of China is consumption versus investment. China has driven its growth on the basis of investment, and it needs now to develop a second engine, consumption. And this is a difficult transition. It takes many years, sometimes decades, to achieve it because it's associated with the business models of elites. So it's more than just asking the Chinese to consume more. There needs to be a new social infrastructure in place, and that takes time. But once it's achieved, it will be the Chinese customer or the Chinese consumer who basically, again, drives the world economy. Not only the Chinese factory, but the Chinese consumer. There's other types of structural reforms that need to be undertaken at the economic level, at the micro level. One is a renewed emphasis on services. Services are essential, and China is underperforming here in comparison to its strength in manufacturing. So if Chinese, the value added that comes from services increases, you will see a new engine of Chinese growth emerging. Of course, all of this presupposes that China will be an open market, that there will be competition, and that foreign players will have an impact in the Chinese economy by way of trade or by way of foreign direct investment. So it becomes increasingly important for China to rely on its domestic market for growth. And China can do it. China is large enough that the reliance on exports, which has traditionally been high, but again, not as high as Switzerland or Germany or other countries who, as percentage of their GDP, rely more on exports than China does. At the end of the day, the Chinese market is sophisticated, diverse, rich, deep enough to power a Chinese economic growth. There is three markets that China can look at. One is the domestic market, being the most important one. One are the Western markets that sort of determine in many respects how competitive Chinese products are, because if they succeed in Western markets, they can succeed everywhere. But there is also the rest, right? There is the West and then there's the rest, but the rest may be more important than the West. So the rest over the West, especially if there is things like geopolitical tensions. And it will be, of course, also a challenge for Western companies to see if they can succeed in the rest of the world when they compete against Chinese companies. China is the main factor to create an independent trade dynamic within the Asia region. But if Asia grows, even if the West is not involved in that story directly, this in itself could create incredible momentum for the rest of the global economy. So even though the West has nothing to say about the relationship between China and Vietnam. If this relationship is good, the West will benefit. And because the world, after all, is connected. What we see is that after COVID, expectations were very high. There was a very fast recovery. And this year, the results show that the sentiment is less positive than it was just after COVID. However, it's still one of the highest sentiments if you compare it for over the last 10 years. It's still overall positive in the sense that the Swiss companies will not withdraw from China, will keep their investments. Many will increase their investments, but the increase in investment is definitely much lower than in the past. And it's interesting because the sentiment is positive, but not everybody will double down on their investments. Many will keep their investments. Very few companies will withdraw from China. And most of them report as their main challenge that Chinese competitors are becoming stronger. Chinese competitors within China, but also abroad, are challenging Western companies. And of course, competition is good, but it also makes it more difficult to be successful and increase one's revenue in China. However, since Swiss companies are traditionally always playing at the high end, are very innovative, are in global markets very competitive and efficient, they also will continue to do well in China.